everyone. Thank you for that lovely introduction. My name is Katherine. I'm the editor-in-chief and president of the Columbia Daily Spectator at Columbia University in New York.
I'm Rahil. I'm the managing editor at the Spectator.
So, as mentioned, we're going to be talking about the graduate student workers strike, which occurred on our campus last April. It happened the week right before finals, which we have a reading period where classes end and everyone studies for a week. And during that week, all graduate student workers, so including teaching assistants and research assistants, went on strike. And you'll see sort of what that entailed and how that impacted the campus community and students studying for finals and just getting ready for the end of the year.
Yeah, to kick us off, the history of graduate students striking or working, unionizing on campus has been a long one that's happened for at least the past couple of years. Specifically in 2016, when graduate students largely voted to unionize and tried to get recognition with the National Labor Relations Board, something that Columbia its administration consistently denied and tried to fight in long legal battles. This led to years of back and forth between the union and the administration. And you can see kind of in that graphic, it's been a long road to sort of striking. And this is really important because Columbia and Spectator trying to maintain that neutrality. We've really been the watchdog to report on this back and forth. Everything from the union announcing that it would plan to strike to the administration saying we want to maintain our stance as in a university where graduate students are not employees, they are students, and trying to make that sort of legal distinction. And this has led to sort of a long back and forth that eventually developed into the graduate students planning to strike in April. As you can see sort of in this timeline, this was just the past few months between like January and April 2018. Graduate students tried to announce the strike, they voted to strike. The university maintained that it shouldn't happen. And then this sort of devolved into the end where there's picket lines. They tried to strike indefinitely, and eventually, after a week, right before finals started, the graduate students eventually ended the strike. And Katherine talked a little bit about how exactly we did that coverage.
Totally. So as you can imagine, there's, as Rahil was mentioning, both the union itself and the university were each releasing statements about their stance on the position, and pretty strongly so. And so Spectator really emerged as this space where people could go and fact check either side of what the claims were and how that was actually going to play out in real time and how that would affect their courses. So we knew that we had a mandate coming into this story, making sure that everyone was informed about what was going on and how they could actually continue to get their work done, but also understand what this, big project was for the union. And so as we were coordinating coverage, we knew that the best way to tell this, the most comprehensive way to tell this, would be to put teams of reporters together with writers and photographers and videographers and send them on the ground where the picket line was happening all day long. And the strike happened, I think, from 9 a.m. to, past classes ending 5 p.m. every day. And that center picture in the bottom there is the actual picket line from above, where they would go back and forth all day long. And so what we ended up doing was, of course, having daily news coverage where we were making sure we were up to date on all of the happenings of each day of the strike. There were people who came and, politicians who came. Cynthia Nixon was running for governor at the time, and she came and made a surprise appearance at the strike. Dolores Huerta, who's a labor activist, also came and made an appearance at the strike. So we're making sure that we are keeping up to date with those kinds of things, but also any advancements by the union or the university. So we published 2 different photo essays, a video of explaining what happened on the first day of the strike, and circulated that on Facebook primarily. And then, of course, we were also updating on Instagram and Twitter, which you'll see in our next slide, making sure that everyone sort of knew what was going on. What was really important to us was making sure that we were up to date. And of course, because the strike was all day long, these live updates were crucial. So we had 2 different live updating platforms going on at the same time. We had our Instagram story, which garnered over 1,000 views throughout the day. And there we featured different stories of individual workers who were striking, anyone who were bringing pets or they had children on the Friday of the strike. They had a stroller brigade where graduate workers who have children brought those children and then just paraded up and down campus. They went up to the med school at one point. So we were making sure that we were having all of the different angles of the story and talking to everyone who was impacted in all of those different ways. But the key being that it was up to the minute and it was where our readers were. So it was making sure it's not only on our website, but we were actually reaching them where they were, which was on all these different social media platforms. That also gave us the opportunity to, tag people like Cynthia Nixon when she came in our posts. So that obviously, increases reach, which was our goal.
And in order to uphold this mandate, something that we found really powerful was being able to capture all the nuance of the day-to-day strike, because it was something that happened for an entire week where in large part, a lot of important classes were canceled because graduate students account for a lot of TAs and professors of some of the most basic classes. Columbia is a core curriculum, so all of those core classes are taught by graduate students, meaning that a lot of students didn't have class right before finals week, which is the week where people are studying, people are trying to get the professors to answer questions. And one specific story that we found really powerful was in the first year class that everyone takes called Literature Humanities. The last week of that class is likely when students will read the only Black author on the syllabus, Toni Morrison, and I believe one of the 2 female authors on the syllabus. And because of the strike, a lot of students not get to read that author. And the core at Columbia has also been criticized a lot in the past for just being predominantly white, predominantly focused on old Western tradition. So this was a huge loss that we felt like was really important to cover. And keeping in with sort of what's happening now, it's been almost a year since that happened. And in November, actually in a huge victory for graduate students, the university finally agreed to start bargaining negotiations. We're happening recently, started in February, and something that we're continuing to do watchdog coverage of. So this is just us continuing to uphold our mandate and cover this story.
Yeah, so this really, I think, is the biggest story of our time at Columbia. Graduate student workers, fighting for the right to unionize and be recognized by the university is obviously a national story that is playing out here at Harvard and at universities across the country. And so Columbia and its decisions here really are impacting not only what is happening on our campus, but around the country. And recently, our provost has just decided to step down, and he has been pretty adamant, leading the university's charge against unionizing until they came to the bargaining table. So that's the most recent update. But yeah, does anyone have any questions? Sure.
What does your staff look like in terms of numbers? How do you have your staff kind of divvied up?
Totally. So we're, as an organization, about 300 people. We have 2 different divisions. One is all of our reporting and also including editorial, and then we have our business division. It's about a 150 split each way. So within that, it's divided into news teams and all of our different reporting sections, and then opinion editors. And so I would say that splits up pretty evenly amongst them. But we have reporters, writers, photographers, videographers, and we send them out in different teams to cover something like this.
And specifically for this coverage of the strike, we have about a new staff of close to 30 writers, but we only have 1 or 2 specifically union beat reporters because it's so prevalent in Columbia. But given how much coverage we need to do that week, we basically just said everyone covered the union this week. And we just had them chat for shifts so that at any given time on the picket line there was at least a reporter and a photographer there.
We knew they were there. We had Slack channels. Everyone was in the union Slack at different points. We were mostly on the ground because our classes were canceled. And
Always
we were
get them.
Don't talk about that part. So we were mostly on the ground, but there were different developments. For example, we're right next to Riverside Park, and classes were either canceled or moved. So as we learned, there were at one time 9 different courses happening in the park because professors did not want students to have to cross the picket line, but they still also wanted to help them prepare for finals and not have to sort of make that sacrifice. So when classes were moved, we were constantly saying okay, Cherry, can you go with Raya to the park? We just heard that there are 9 classes there. We want pictures, talk to a couple of the professors, stay after class. And so it was that quick adaptation that was really crucial and was honestly very fun for our staff. And they still all sort of talk about it. And that was a way to really emphasize cross-collaboration and getting people to think about the whole story, the multimedia story, and not just their own individual work.
How did you handle the logistics and communications of that when some stories were kind of spiraling out of stories and stuff like that? How did you handle sending people around to make sure everyone was communicating with each other about what they knew and what other people needed to know for
That's a great question. So before the strike, when we realized how big this was actually going to impact campus, when we were hearing that classes were being canceled, the first thing we did was planning for it a couple of days beforehand. We sat down in a dining hall and started an Excel spreadsheet and decided to start crowdsourcing among our staff any classes that they knew were canceled or that they heard were going to be moved. And we started having people just update that spreadsheet because we figured, we have 300 people, they may as well tell us what's going on in their courses. So we first started to get that information, and that helped us sort of organize what we thought we would need to like divide people into different teams. But we really just mandated that people check their phone and said, like, you need to be on your Slack. This is the biggest story of your time at Columbia. You work here, like, this is a mandate, you have to do it. And we really hyped people up about that, and explained that we were going to be like the first and foremost source where people were getting their news, so they had a mandate to do it. And I think that really empowered them and made them excited to work, and us being excited the whole time also really helped. So I think that it was really about making sure that they knew what they were there to do, and then people felt like they could be like all hands on deck, even if it wasn't their beat. It wasn't even if they weren't a news reporter or news photographer, they mainly covered other beats. They were like, wow, I really have to be here. So it was getting them excited and making sure that Slack and text were on all the time. Sure. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.